Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today we're going to be taking a look at my currently reading list on Goodreads, also known as my pile of shame. I'm very much a mood reader, and I'm very bad about starting a book and never finishing it. Even though all of these, because they're still on my currently reading list, they're all things that I had put down with the full intention of coming back to them soon and finishing them, but for various reasons I haven't. So we're going to go through and talk about all the books that are currently on that list, talk a little bit about why I haven't finished them. Mostly the answer to that is going to be school right now for most of the more recent ones, and then also talk about some ideas that I have for finally getting to them, because I would really like to be able to actually clear out my currently reading and go into 2024 with nothing getting carried over, which has not successfully happened in any of the previous years, I think, since I started this channel. So that's the plan for today, and we're just going to dive in. I'm going to go through these in the order that I have most recently started them, to the oldest books on the list, and I'll briefly mention when I actually started the books, and we'll go from there. So the very first book that I have to talk about is Finlay Donovan is Killin' It by Elle Cosimano. I was originally reading this because I had planned a cozy mystery reading vlog. I wanted to read a couple of hyped mysteries that I hadn't gotten to yet, this one and also The Thursday Murder Club, and then I also wanted to read the new release, Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. So this was supposed to come out in like the spring of this year, and I was reading this, and then I was working on final papers, and so I stopped reading it. But I actually started this one on April 17th, 2023, so that was the most recent. I've managed to finish a few other things that had been on this list for a while, but this is the most recent thing that just kind of hung onto the list. I think I do want to resurrect this video idea because I was very excited for all of these, and I am thoroughly enjoying this book. I think my bookmark should still be in there. I've read a little under half, and this book took a twist I wasn't expecting shortly before I stopped reading, so I do really want to get back to it, and I still am excited about that vlog idea, so I may try to resurrect that for late summer, early fall. The next book I started on April 4th, 2023, and this is Shadow in the Amber by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first book in the Flesh and Fire spinoff from the Blood and Ash series, and I've been reading all of these books for my friends' entertainment. We have a cursed book club that we do, where basically they pick things that they want to know about, or I find things that sound vaguely cursed, and I read them and I tell them about them. Occasionally somebody else will read a book and tell the group about it, and that's always fun, but mostly I'm the one who reads the most outside of this, and no, I take that back. One of my friends reads like a ton. She's way ahead of me this year, but she's less likely to read something that is cursed because if she starts it and goes, oh, I don't like this, she's just going to set it aside. She's not going to keep reading it. So I'm the one that reads the cursed books and tells everybody about them. I've been reading the series because I thought it would be fun, and it has been a good one for that group. But I had read about 100 pages of this, and then my library loan ended, and I stopped reading it. So I need to get back to it because I've gotten it back from the library like several times since then, but I've just been in the midst of other things and haven't found my way back to actually reading it. I'm currently waiting on it to come in again. I think I had like 2 or 3 weeks left, so I should be getting it soon, and I'm hopeful that I can maybe power through the end of it in August. The next book I started on March 10th, 2023, and this one is Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I had been really interested in this one for a while. I'd seen a lot of other people reading it. It sounded like it was going to be a really fascinating vampire story, and I was really enjoying it. I actually have no idea why I put this one down. I think maybe I was in a slumpy mood because I've been kind of in a reading slump for the first half of the year. I've been reading a lot less than I did the year before, although I also have to factor in that I've been doing school and thesis work, so kind of balances out. I think it's probably because of that. And I do notice that when I'm stressed, I read a lot less because there's a part of me that goes, oh, I shouldn't be reading, I need to be working. But sometimes I don't have something like directly to work on, or I'm waiting for feedback on something or things like that. And when I'm stressed, I just read less. I can't explain that, but it's a thing that happens. So I suspect this was probably a victim of that. But this is a really interesting story about a young woman who is a vampire, and she is living on her own for the first time and trying to navigate her identity and how to live alone. She's never been without her mother, and there's a lot of stuff in here about like her interest in food and her cultural background. Her father was, I think, Japanese, so she has like a particular interest in like Japanese food that she's never been able to try, but they were foods that her father loved. And there's just all kinds of really interesting things going on in here, and I was really enjoying the writing style. This is in first person. We're in Lydia's head for the whole book, and I just think she's an interesting character, so I do want to get back to this. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to structure this. I don't know if I'm going to put it in a video or what, but this isn't even a very long book, so I may try and maybe restart this one or just pick up where I left off for spooky season when we get closer to Halloween. I might try to do something with some vampire books because I actually have at least one other vampire book in this stack, and there's a vampire book coming out in late summer that I'm really excited for. Next up is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which I started on January 11th, 2023. I started reading this because the Catch Up Book Club is doing the First Law along. I became aware of the Catch Up Book Club too late to start on the Robin Hobb read along that they did, and I didn't want to try and catch up on like a 16 book series, but then they were starting this, and I'd been kind of eyeing this for a while. I wanted to try it, and this was definitely a victim of school because they were reading this one for their January and February pick. I started in January. I read about half the book. I am loving this. I think it's fantastic. The characters are really compelling. The character voices are really well done. Like, it's really distinctive and it's easy to tell who you're reading at any given time. And there's a lot of interesting stuff happening here, even though there's not like a discernible plot. I couldn't point to something and go, okay, this is what's happening. But this book very much feels like getting the pieces onto the game board kind of a thing. And I am loving it, but this was a victim of school. And I started this with the intention of keeping up with the Catch Up Book Club, and now I am 4 books behind because I think this month and next month they're reading Best Served Cold, which is one of the first standalones, or is the first standalone they're reading because they have finished the trilogy. I am planning, I think in August possibly, to do a powering through the First Law video where I read all the way through this first trilogy because I am still like super invested in this, and I have book number 2 down here on my shelf, and then I'll probably go get book number 3 during that vlog. Next begun on January 14th, so these are actually out of order. I don't know why they got swapped like that, so this is actually slightly more recent than The Blade Itself, but the next thing I have here is The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett. This one is one I had an arc of, and I just was not vibing with it. I really loved her book, The Appeal, and I just was not getting along with The Twyford Code as well. I think I just don't care for the audio transcript format. I really liked the email format in The Appeal, but I feel like the audio transcripts in The Twyford Code are not adding anything to it for me. I am interested to see where the mystery is going. I think that's kind of fun, and I like the main character. This is about an ex-con who's gotten out of prison, and now he's trying to figure out this mystery of a book that he found when he was a child and a teacher of his that went missing. And I think it's really interesting, but I just am not vibing with the audio transcript formatting of this. I am, however, excited for Janice Hallett's next book, which is The Curious Case of the Alternate Angels or something. That one's about a cult, but I think it's more mixed media. There's like different types of documents, so I am excited to see what she's going to do with that. This one, though, I started the arc, I just kind of got bored with it, stopped reading it, and I do need to finish it. I think I'm going to do some arc reading in the next little bit because I have 3 arcs I need to finish, and if I can finish those, I'll actually have my ratio up to 100%. Those are the only ones I have outstanding, so this is one of those. Next up, I have a book I started on December 17th of 2022, and this is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. Despite the fact I've been reading it for like 9 months and refusing to pick it up is, I think, the way to say it, refusing to pick it up because I'm scared of what's going to happen to these characters. Despite that, this is already a new favorite. I am about 50% of the way through the book, and I love this. The characters are so interesting. There's a lot of really interesting stuff happening with gender in this book, and basically everyone is morally gray. I am loving everything about this, and I know it's going to be a new favorite. I just need to finish it, and my poor friend read this like 18 months ago and has been waiting for me to read this, and she's just like dying to talk about it, and I'm making it really hard on her. So this one is actually one I'm currently reading because one of the other arcs I need to read I just got, and it's He Who Drowned the World, which is the sequel to this one. So that comes out at the end of August. I will be reading this in the next couple of days, hopefully. This is what I'm currently reading for my ongoing reading vlog at the moment, my weekend reading vlog, and I'm hopeful that I will have this done very, very soon. Next up is Leech by Hiron Ennis, which is a book that I started on audio. This one I started on, I believe it was December 2nd of 2022. Yep, that's correct. So I started this one on December 2nd, and I was listening to the audiobook while I was working. However, work hours for GAs end in early December, and I had a couple of days I needed to make up, so I did that. And I was listening to this one, and I did not manage to finish the audiobook before I stopped, like before my hours ended, and I had like a month off because GAs can't work during winter break. So I had this month off, and I wasn't doing anything where I could listen and continue reading. And I really am enjoying the audiobook. It's narrated by Abigail Thorne, who is the creator behind Philosophy Tube, and I just think she did a fantastic job. There are, however, some really thick accents in here, and I was having to listen to the audiobook at 1x speed to catch all of the accents, which I never do with audiobooks, so that was why it was taking so long. It's a very short book, too, and you can see how far I made it because I stuck the bookmark in there to mark where I had stopped. And another really fantastic book. This is a really creepy post-apocalyptic, I think, horror book about a doctor who is a hive mind, and they are trying to solve the murder of one of their bodies up in, the far north. And so I think this is really fascinating, and I was enjoying it so much. It's really creepy. I think the characters are odd in a really fun way, but I just did not finish that in time, and I have not gone back to the audiobook because then, when I tried to listen to it the next time, I couldn't remember what was happening because it had been so long since I had listened to it, and I tend to take in information better when I read it with my eyes versus my ears, so I was having a little trouble kind of getting back to grips with the story. So I think this is one I am going to have to probably hybrid read to get what's going on, and I'm probably going to have to restart it for that. But I do think this is really fun, and this is another one I might try to read around spooky season this year, because I think it'll be a really fun horror book for around Halloween. This next book I was aiming to read for spooky season last year, and I started it on October 11th of 2022. This is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and I was really enjoying this. This is a gothic story about a woman who marries a guy that she barely knows in, I think, post-revolutionary Mexico? Yeah. It's after the Mexican War of Independence. She marries this guy to secure some stability for herself and her family, and then things are very, very wrong at the house. There is also a priest that is the only person who will help her, and so she has a relationship that forms with this priest. And I was really enjoying this. This is another one where I really like the characters, and I think the main character is fun. I think she's a young woman who's a little bit naive, but also she just wants so much to have stability for her family. So I really enjoyed the way that played into the decisions that she made. But this was one that just was a victim of my being in a slump and having work to do for class, and I set it down and never came back. Next up is a book from another vlog that just kind of got set to the wayside because of school. I was doing my first semester, so I was, getting to grips with everything. But I started this one in September of 2022, on the 13th of September. This is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I had a Dark Academia vlog planned that I was very excited about. I've never actually read Dark Academia, but I have a ton of books on my shelf that fit into that category. And so I was planning to do a whole vlog of reading, if not all of them, at least a chunk of them, for Halloween, and have that go up right around Halloween. I think maybe Halloween was a Tuesday of last year, or close to a Tuesday. So that was the plan there. It fell through because this book is very slow and it's very long, and I was writing papers and I just did not get there. It was kind of around the midterm part of the semester, and so I just didn't finish reading it. However, there is one of my classmates who loves this book, and she has asked me several times since then, have you finished The Secret History yet? So I really need to read this one, and I think I am going to resurrect that vlog as well, because I was really excited about it, and I do have a ton of books on my shelf that fit this, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to just try and start it a little bit earlier so that I actually have time to get through some of these books. Then we have Jade War, which I started on June 3rd, 2022. And this one was one that I was buddy reading with a friend. We both read Jade City and then decided to buddy read Jade War together. And then we both got scared and stopped reading because Jade City has one of the most devastating character deaths I've read for me personally. There was a character that dies in Jade City who I went and talked to my friend who she hadn't read it yet, but I said, hey, this character is my favorite character. He's great. And then 5 pages later, he died. And I was like, well, shit. Basically, if I like a character, they're doomed to either die or be evil. Without fail. That happens, every time. But my favorite character died in the first book, and I realized that Fonda Lee has no qualms whatsoever at hurting and killing her characters. And so I was really scared going into this one, and I read 50 pages. And then we both stopped reading. We both went, but what if we didn't feel that kind of pain? So I was on page 58, and I love Jade City so much, and I really, really want to read this. I just need to get over being scared, kind of similarly to She Who Became the Sun. I just need to get over my fear of it and read it. Continuing on, we are getting closer to the beginning of 2022. This is May 6, 2022. I started Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This was, I believe, her debut novel, and this is a heist story about a group of Chinese American students who are hired to steal Chinese artifacts from museums and return them to China. A really interesting concept. I think I got stuck with this one because the writing wasn't totally vibing with me. Part of the issue I think I was having was that all of the character voices sound very similar, so I don't really remember any of the characters now. I think every section sounds similar. I did like the characters, it just wasn't totally working for me. I was really enjoying the plot. I think it's really fun and I like the pacing of it, but I just was not getting along with the writing at the time, and I just needed to walk away from it. But I am hoping to get back to it because I think I am going to enjoy this. It's probably not going to be a new favorite or anything. Then on April 5th, 2022, I started Throne of Glass, and that was actually the second time that I tried to read this. I read, I want to say, like, up to chapter 3 a very long time ago. I don't remember exactly when. It would have had to have been 2022, I think, because I didn't get the book until 2022. Actually, that was probably the first time I started it. I think I read it first in April. I read like 15 pages, I stopped reading it, I put it down. Then I came back to it and I read up to the page 100 mark. Not quite. 86. I was thinking I was closer to 100. Anyway, I read like 80 some pages of this in some month later in 2022, and then never came back. I've DNF'd this book twice, basically, and that's been frustrating for me because I really want to read this before I read Crescent City, and I know that there are a lot of Easter eggs and that there's going to be some crossover later on. I have been spoiled a little bit for the ending of the second Crescent City book, but I want to go ahead and read this, and I think that part of my problem is I don't like Selena as well as a protagonist as I liked Feyre. Feyre is not by any means my favorite protagonist, but I think she's more interesting than Selena at the beginning. Selena feels very much like she's just good at everything, and she's just like the classic stabby protagonist. So I've been struggling with this one. Next up, in March of 2022, on March 10th, I started The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, which is a Viking inspired epic fantasy. I was really enjoying this. I think I'm like 50 pages in. I don't think I still have a bookmark in here. I think I took it out because I knew I was going to need to restart this. I really was liking what I was reading here. I know that John Gwynne is a popular author, particularly the Faithful and the Fallen series I've seen a lot about, but this one sounded like it'd be right up my alley. I like that it reminds me a little bit of like Skyrim with some of the information in the little summary, and I'm excited to get to it. This is on my priority TBR for the year, so I am going to hopefully finish that TBR. We will see. I've got 10 books left on it, and I would like to get to this one maybe in August. That would be really great. We will see what happens with that. Now we're getting into the 2 years ago stuff, because next up is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, which I started in September, on the 29th of September in 2021, and I read 200 pages of this and then stopped reading it. And I think the problem is that this is just incredibly fine. It's good. I was having a good time with it. But there were other things I wanted to read more than this. And this was also one I was reading for my Cursed Books Club with my friends, I should say. And they were having a great time listening to me read it. There's some wild shit that happens in this in the first 200 pages. I just was not loving the writing style, and I wanted to read other things more, so I stopped reading it. This one I'm probably going to come back to also for spooky season. I have this like little collection starting here for spooky season, but I think I want to do something with vampires because I have like 3 vampire books I really want to read, which is this one, Woman Eating, and then I also have Silver Under Nightfall by Rinch Pecco that I would like to get to. So I'm thinking I might do like a vampire-y thing for October. So that's kind of the plan there. This was just a weird reading experience because his writing is kind of all over the place. There are bits where he would write something that'd be really evocative and I'd be like, see, that's really good. And then he would say that like the door was locked like a secret. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. So I think it's that some of his imagery tends to be kind of nonsensical. It doesn't really mean anything. And it's not evocative in any way, but then he'll write something, there's a line in there that I really like that says something like, the houses leaned on each other like drunkards at last call, and I was like, that's a really fun description, I like that. But most of it was nonsensical metaphors, and also the main characters being a little too horny all the time, like all of the time. Next up, we have, from August 14th, 2021, The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. This was yet another book that got scrapped. This was yet another vlog that got scrapped. A book from a vlog that got scrapped. I was doing a vlog based on Final Girl books because there was this tweet that came out right after this book came out. Riley Sager tweeted something kind of snide about, like, remakes are never as good as the original, because he had written Final Girls, and that was one of his first books, and so that happened, and there was a little bit of controversy around that on Twitter, and I thought that was interesting, especially because before Riley Sager at Final Girls, Stephen Graham Jones wrote The Last Final Girl. So I was planning to read those three all together, and just, talk about how they do things similarly or differently regarding the Final Girl trope. And this ended up falling apart because I was in a very slumpy mood at the time, and I really was not totally vibing with this book. Like, it's fun, but I think I was having a little bit of trouble with some of the stuff the main character was doing. I was just like, why is she doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And so I wasn't totally remaining invested, and this vlog kind of fell apart because of that, and I've since read Final Girls, so I can't really do that same vlog concept anymore, but I think this is probably another one I'd like to pick up around Halloween. A lot of these are ones I started for Halloween and then didn't finish, so I'd like to have a little bit of redemption and finish these for some sort of spooky season stuff for Halloween. We have finally reached our penultimate book. We have just two more, and this one I started in May of 2021. This is May 31st of 2021. This is The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And it's so surprising to me that I haven't finished this one yet, because I love all of her books. I've read several of them now, and I think I've given them all 4.5 or 5 stars. I love her writing, and I think I started this shortly after reading Pride and Prejudice for the first time as well. Or maybe not Pride and Prejudice, there was something else I was reading that was like a novel of manners. I can't remember what it was now. But I really was enjoying this. It's a novel of manners, but with telekinesis. And it's so much fun, and I really like the main character here. She's really fascinated by bugs. She kind of wants to be like an entomologist before I think entomology is really a thing, or at least it doesn't, I guess, does she mention entomology specifically? I can't remember. She's really into bugs, and she's just kind of like quirky and fun, and definitely knows who she wants to be, and I really loved that aspect of her character, but she's also a little bit naive, and she gets involved with this telekinesis performer who has ulterior motives for being with her, and he's kind of taking her under his wing, but it's about that relationship and the dynamic between them and some of the other kind of webs of connections going on, and I just loved everything about this, and I don't know why I didn't finish it. I really don't know why I put this book down, but this is one I would love to get back to, and I'm just not sure how I'm gonna do that yet. And now finally, the book I started the longest time ago. I started this on December 13th, 2020. This is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is another book I was absolutely loving. I think it's going to be potentially a new favorite. I think the characters in here are fantastic. There's some really interesting kind of mysteries being set up. This is a pre-Columbian inspired fantasy, and just everything here was so good. Why did I stop reading it? I genuinely don't know. This is another one where I don't know why I put it down. I love everything else I've read from Rebecca Roanhorse. I know tons of people have talked about how good this series is, and I don't know why I put it down. But this is one that I am very hopeful to get to, because I also have Fevered Star on my shelf, and I think we're getting the 3rd book next year, so I'd really love to be able to actually finish this series when that book comes out, because I really enjoyed Rebecca Roanhorse's 6th World series that begins with The Trail of Lightning, and I just know I'm gonna love this. Like, I can tell from the first half of this book. I have also read, like, 150 pages of this, so it's not even like I'm not that far in. I made it almost halfway, so this is another one where I just don't know why I put it down, but I really need to. So those are all of the books that are currently languishing on my pile of shame, and I have a couple of thoughts here. Obviously, there were some vlogs I mentioned I'd like to resurrect, and some things I would like to read for spooky season, but I'm also thinking about putting together a vlog series of specifically reading the things on this list, going back to things that I haven't read in a long time and finishing them. And I would love to know if you guys would have any interest in that, if anybody thinks that would be I don't know, enjoyable to watch. I know it'll be enjoyable for me to make because these are all books I think I'm going to like mostly. There's like 2 here that I'm not as convinced on. But I have a couple of ideas. I'm thinking one with like series starts. I have a few beginnings of series here. A couple of vlogs possibly that are series dedicated. Obviously the vampire vlog can kind of come out of part of this stack. So I have some ideas for that, and I would love to know if you guys have any interest in seeing a clearing out my currently reading series. I may do it anyway, regardless of what you say, but that's kind of what I'm thinking right now in terms of getting to some of these where I don't have a defined plan or vlog that they kind of came from anyway. So that's where I'm at with my currently reading list. I am hopeful to get this narrowed down to 0. Not really narrowed down as it completely cleared out. Want it down to 0. Or rather down to like whatever the one book I'm currently reading by the end of the year. That would be fantastic. That's been my goal for the last few years and I've never succeeded at it, but I think it is doable. This is not, it's like it's a lot of books, but it's not that many in comparison to the number I read each year. So I feel like it should be doable and I just need to do it. So that's where I'm at with that, and I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these and if you have any like strong opinions on any of them. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.